What's going on, y'all? Machiavelli Mills TV. So, somebody asked me to make a video about what was the coolest class or most interesting class I ever took while I was in college, right? And I would have to say that my most interesting class was when I was in graduate school at Arkansas State University, right? It was a class called Race, Gender, Media, and it was taught by a black woman named Miss Sandra Combs, right? And Miss Combs, I'm talking about is, man, I love Miss Combs. This was probably the most fun class I had it was the most fun class I had and most interesting class I had during my entire graduate school, like my whole time in graduate school, for real. I took that class my first semester and it was like a breath of fresh air for me. This class, it tackled everything from race, religion, gender roles in society, all different type of things, and things that are like constructive conversations for the society that we live in. We visited as far as religion goes. We visited a mosque, which is a place of worship for people of Islamic faith. We visited a synagogue, which is a house of worship for people of the Jewish faith, right? We went to the Catholic Church. We wrote about our experiences. We got to experience different parts of their religion. We got to ask certain questions. It was great insight. I had never been inside of a mosque ever in my life, even though I'm in Chicago, Illinois, and there are several mosques for the Nation of Islam here. I've never been inside of a mosque outside, other than the time that I went to a mosque in Jonesboro, Arkansas. That's where Arkansas State University is located, right? And so these were great experiences for people who never got to just understand the ins and outs of different religious groups, right? But not only for religion, it wasn't just good for religion. This was good for conversations about race. Arkansas State, of course, Arkansas is a red state. It's a red state in general, right? This is a state in Jonesboro in particular where I saw Confederate flags on cars consistently, on license plates, so on and so forth. You can imagine me being a black young man from the south side of Chicago. It's racist people in Chicago, Illinois, without question. But they will never wear Confederate flags around here because they know it wouldn't fly and there would be pushback from people that live here. People that live here would not let it fly. They would be like, hold on. They would be confrontational about it, so on and so forth. So they would rather keep that hidden. In the South, you have a lot of people who don't give a damn what anybody has to say about the Confederate flag. They love that flag. A lot of people identify with what it represents, and they're proud to rep that flag without question. And they're going to do it in your face regardless. So that was my first time really being exposed to seeing that much of the Confederate flag, even though I was in Mississippi for my undergraduate years. I was in the Mississippi Delta. And so in the part that I was in, I wasn't just roaming all throughout the state of Mississippi. So I was staying really close to the campus and the areas, and I wasn't seeing Confederate flags like that, even though the Confederate flag is inside of the state flag for the state of Mississippi. I don't know if it still is, but when I was in school, it was inside of the state flag for sure. So nonetheless, I was in a state like Arkansas. And so when you see the Confederate flag, a lot of people try to say we rep it for tradition. But that's a whole bunch of BS because we know what that flag symbolized for my people. It was a sign of terror for my people, for black folks. And so, Miss Combs would talk about why black people are offended by that flag, how she could never get behind that flag, what it symbolized. It was often a symbol of brutality and all type of just racial prejudices, racial hate crimes against black folks. It was used to terrorize black folks in the South and in the North at times, but in the South in particular. And so she expressed these things. And she's not doing it, like, again, we're having conversations about race and how black people feel about this, how black people feel about unarmed black folks being killed in the street. We talked about people of Islamic faith being judged at the airport, so on and so forth, and all this and all. We had all these type of conversations in a classroom full of predominantly it was a white class for the most part. It was full of white faces, and she had the courage to have these conversations towards people who these conversations are meant to be heard by, right? These conversations that we have amongst ourselves as black people, we talk about certain things. She talked about white privilege. in a classroom full of white children. Not children, white young adults. You know, she talked about white privilege in this classroom. And a lot of I give her so much credit because a lot of black teachers or instructors would have felt discouraged from having that type of conversation because they don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to be seen as an individual who is like going against the grain, not going against the grain, but basically like challenging, I guess, or the way of thinking in the South, where they don't want to be looked at as like, oh my God, trying to preach some type of separatist thing, even though it's not separatist. It's white privilege is a real thing and it should be discussed. She did that in front of a class full of white people, white kids, and did not care how people perceived it. She didn't care about, oh my God, they're going to think I'm a racist if I have this conversation. It's like, no, these are real conversations that are had within my community. And we're going to have these conversations. And she didn't care because she didn't bring up these conversations to be malicious. She brought up these conversations for us to have dialogue about certain things that certain racial prejudices that black people face that aren't faced by white Americans, that white Americans don't face. And I remember when she brought up the subject of white privilege, we had certain individuals in the class that felt like, oh my, I don't like white privilege, because their thought of white privilege is, you're thinking that I only got this job because I'm white and I worked hard for this, so on and so forth. And they like, listen, white privilege is not just you getting a promotion. White privilege is you being able to walk around this campus scot-free without police following you or wondering if you go to this school or do you belong on this campus. The way I was profiled when I was at Arkansas State, coming out of the graduate housing in the village. One day I'm coming out of the graduate housing, I'm coming down the stairs, getting ready to go meet with I was a grad assistant. So I was getting ready to go meet with the professor I was a graduate assistant for. On my way it was cold outside. It's pretty chilly. It's like in the fall time. So it's getting cold. On my way towards the communication building to meet with the professor, I get stopped by the police. Or while I'm walking, I get stopped by the police, right? Police officer pulls up behind me. Now, mind you, I'm wearing all black. I have a black White Sox fitted like this. I have a black Chicago White Sox starter jacket, black jeans, black Timberland boots, right? Have earrings in my ear. So I know what this was about. This was about me looking too urban to be in the graduate school housing area, right? So because while I'm coming down the steps, as I'm leaving my apartment complex, I see the police officer just driving by, looking around, just driving by, because they used to come and drive through the area a lot anyway, just riding through the area in the graduate housing, I guess to keep everything clean and kosher back there, right? So sometimes they would do that. I'm leaving out early in the morning. She stops me and she says they got a report of a shorter black male. I'm only 5'9.5". They have a report of a shorter black male in all black walking around twisting doorknobs in the village apartment complex. I know that's a lie. They didn't get no damn report of that. She looked at me and thought, what is this dude doing back here? He looked way too urban with this all black on, these earrings in his ear, this Timberland boots and this starter jacket, this baseball cap. He don't belong back here. What is he doing back here? She comes behind, so she pulls up behind me. She gets out of the car. She asks me for identification. She calls backup, another officer. You know, white police officers. She calls backup for another officer to come behind her, right? To give her backup. She going through my pocket. She's calling the head of the apartment complex to see if I live in there. She's like, she's trying to be nice about it. Do you have a Malcolm Miller who lives? Where you going? I'm like, I live back here. I'm going to go meet the graduate. I'm a graduate assistant. I'm in grad school. I'm going to go meet the professor. I'm going to go meet the professor that I work for. She asking the guy. She's calling Kelly Ponder. And shout out to Kelly. Kelly's a cool guy. He's over the graduate housing. She calling Kelly trying to see if I live in an apartment complex. I tell him what number apartment I live in. She's trying to verify this, so on and so forth. And it's cold outside, so I put my hands in my pocket. She asks, can I take my hands out of my coat pockets? I guess not to be alarmed or whatever. I'm like, it's kind of cold. So the guy that was with her, the guy police officer, white guy, he's trying to be real cool with me. And he knows it's some messed up stuff. I know he knows. So he trying to smooth it over with me, trying to be real cool, asking me about, school, all this and all of that. I'm talking, I'm being cool, being calm. I know I can't get belligerent. I'm a black man out of the state. If I get belligerent and get upset in any way, I could be looked at as a threat and being hostile, and something can happen to me in a state that I know is not in favor of this African American young man. I don't care what nobody say. I'm sorry, Arkansas. I know they wouldn't be trying to be in favor of me down there in Arkansas. Not at all. Especially when they saw that Chicago, Illinois, and the reputation people think Chicago has down there. They see my ID. Wait a second, right? So Kelly tells them I live back there. Everything's cool. She's like, oh, sorry about that. I just had to check. Man, get up out of here, right? And so that is an instance of white privilege. And we had the conversation. You can walk, a white individual can walk through campus freely, no matter what attire they have on, and be assumed, hey, man, he's a student here, right? Me, on the other hand, I could be a graduate student trying to do my thing, trying to pursue my education and, reach new heights and get my degree to go back and get qualified to get a high-paying job. And they could look at me like, what is this dude doing here? He looks too urban, right? And we talked about white privilege being the fact that, I'm sorry for that long anecdote I just told, but white privilege being that, in Chicago, Illinois, I would be in the beauty supply. I remember this in particular on 2 different occasions. Being in the beauty supply and being followed around. Now, these were the Asian workers in the store. Being followed around, me and my mom being followed around because they think we're going to steal from the store, right? I've been profiled several times by white police officers simply because, I don't know, maybe they think I live in a certain neighborhood or whatever. I don't know. White privilege is just, like you said, like I just said, you being able to go in certain areas that are affluent and not being questioned about your presence in this community. Not being looked at as maybe you're a thief. Not being looked at as, or maybe you're not as, maybe you have some type of shystiness to you, so on and so forth. And we had these type of discussions about, and white privilege being the fact that some people, when they go get certain, we talk about makeup and right, how, or even bandages or certain stuff like that, it's the skin color or certain of, white Americans can find their certain skin color, certain shade for certain things, and black folks have a hard time finding these things, certain things for ourselves. White privilege being the fact that, when you're trying to get your home appraised, your home gets appraised at a high rate, right? Black Americans get their house appraised in the same, it could be the same exact house, and they could be valued at $300,000 less, $200,000 less than what the white family was. They got their house appraised at, right? And so we had these type of discussions amongst white American students in the South. And Ms. Combs was fearless in doing these things and engaging in these conversations to have this dialogue. It was about like maybe, I want to say 7 black kids in the class. 7. We had 1 African kid and like 7 American black kids. Everybody else, like class of 30 plus kids in the class, and other students were white Americans, right? And so we were having these discussions. A lot of these young individuals, young folks, young white students, this was their first time being around predominantly black people ever in their life. This is their first time being around black people in general, outside of the towns they live in, because the towns they live in were all white. So this was the time where they were like, oh my God, like, they first time being around, black students. And we having these different conversations about race and how these things affect us in our community, so on and so forth. We having discussions about all these, these were profound talks that she was fearless in having. And we kind of got to some type of understanding about each other and where we come from and the type of challenges that we face. And I was just like, I loved it. I was like, man, this class is really, really dope. We can have these type of conversations without it being too hostile. I was educating people because I had people that was questioning the validity. One student in particular, outside of the regular discussion, was questioning like the validity of my degree at a HBCU. And I was telling them how much we have the same curriculum at HBCUs and how people try to feel like our degrees are watered down at HBCUs. I'm like, how can you say that, man? You ain't never been to a HBCU in your life. We learning the same exact things that y'all learning in this program, and I'm coming to this predominantly white institution and excelling in here, right? So I don't know what you heard about HBCUs. Like my HBCU, I came from Mississippi Valley State University, but we're thriving and we're doing big things, and we're learning the same things y'all learning, and we're able to be more than competent at these schools. You know what I mean? At the predominantly white institutions, and me and my homegirl Joanna and my classmate Rodney Rice, we all came from Mississippi Valley State University and graduated with our masters from Arkansas State University, with our master's degrees in mass communication. So when we were having these type of discussions and about police brutality and all these things, and I was just like, yo, this is a dope class, man. But all shout out to Miss Combs. She wasn't afraid to have these conversations and have have these discussions and dialogue about it amongst the people who really need to hear it the most. White American students who come from a lot of times come from privileged backgrounds. They don't have an understanding of what it's like to be black in America. They just see being black on TV. And a lot of their grandparents or their great-grandparents have this idea of picking yourself up by the bootstraps, and they feel like black people should just do that. And so we were explaining that black folks don't even have a lot of times don't even have a boot to strap up at all in the first place, right? So I love Race Gender Media class. Thank you so much to Ms. Combs. If you at Arkansas State, take that class, Race Gender Media, under Miss Sandra Combs. Peace.